Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Now today I'm going to be making some garlic, herb and parmesan tear apart bread. So this is going to be a loaf of bread which I put together in little squares of flat dough that you can then tear apart almost in slices, I hope. And so for that I'm going to make a fairly basic dough, and then I'm going to add the garlic and the herbs and the parmesan once the dough has proved and been rolled out. So for the dough I have 450 grams of strong white bread flour, 270 millilitres of lukewarm water, 60 millilitres of warm milk, 7 grams of active dry yeast, 30 millilitres of olive oil, a teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of sugar. So that's going to be 4.5 cups of bread flour, 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of water, 1/4 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and that will be those ingredients. Now the first thing we're going, I'll tell you about the filling as well before we move on to starting the bread. I have a cup and a half, which is 112 grams, 4 ounces of shredded parmesan. I have 8 cloves of garlic, which I have chopped quite finely, and then I have 1 teaspoon of thyme, 1 tablespoon of sage, 1 tablespoon of rosemary and 1 tablespoon of basil, all of which I've chopped quite fine. So, and I also have 45 millilitres, 3 tablespoons of olive oil. So we'll set those to the side, and the first thing to do is to activate our yeast. So I'm going to put the milk into a bowl with about a teaspoon of the sugar, and I'm going to add the dried yeast into that, and I'm going to stir that around. I'm going to add that straight in to the lukewarm water, and I'm going to leave that for 10 minutes for the yeast to start activating, and then I'll come back and we'll go on to make our bread dough. Okay, so our yeast has activated quite nicely, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the flour and the remainder of the sugar and the salt into the bowl of my stand mixer, and I'm just going to give that a mix round with a whisk just to get the sugar and the salt distributed a little bit. And then I'm going to add my dough hook attachment, and I'm going to pour my 2 tablespoons of olive oil and my yeast and water and milk mixture into the flour, and then I'm going to knead that starting on slow, and then I'll speed it up until I have a smooth sort of textured dough which has come away from the sides. It should take maybe about 5 minutes. Okay, so that's kneaded quite well and it's still tacky, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that out onto a slightly floured work surface and form it into a ball. As you can see, it's still tacky. I'm going to knead that just a little bit with some extra flour. And form it into a ball. Like that, and then I'm going to put that into a greased bowl. I'll put it in top side down and then turn it over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that, and I'm going to allow it to prove in a warm place for between 1 and 2 hours until it's doubled in size. And then when it's doubled in size, I'll come back and we'll roll it out and we'll get on to the next stage. Okay, so it's been about an hour and a half and my dough has now doubled in size. So what I've got is I have floured my work surface, and I'm going to tip the dough out onto the work surface like that, and I'm going to knock it down to get rid of the air in it. I'm going to turn it over just to get some flour on it. And give that a bit of a knead. I may need some more flour. I just want to get rid of any air that's in it. And then I'm going to roll it out, and I want to roll it out until I get a rectangle of about 12 inches by 20 inches. And as you can see, it's still got lots of air, but the rolling out should remove some of that. And that's about it. You know, it takes some rolling, I have to say. So then what I've done is I have mixed my herbs and my garlic and my 3 tablespoons of olive oil together, and I'm going to put those onto the dough, and I'm going to spread that all over. like that. And then I'm going to sprinkle over my Parmesan cheese. And what I have is I have a 2-pound loaf pan which I have greased, and so I don't think that it needs greasing, but I've done that just to be on the safe side. And then we're going to cut this up and put it into that tin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it into 6 strips lengthways. And they don't have to be straight because I want to get a roughness to this. And then I'm going to cut it into 6 strips the other way as well. And then I'm going to take each piece and put it on top of, to create little piles like this. And with the last piece, I'm actually going to turn it over like that. So that will then become, sorry, I'm not going to do that at this stage, I'll do that later. I'm going to make this the end piece, so I'm going to put that in like that. So that's all quite rough. So what I'm going to do then is take my tin and I'm going to stand them up on their ends like that, on the edge. And this last one goes in like that. And I'm going to actually pick up this cheese that's fallen off, and I'm going to sprinkle that over the top. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that again loosely with some plastic wrap and allow that to prove for a further 30 minutes. While that's proving, I'm going to preheat my oven to 180 Celsius, that's 160 Celsius with the fan, 350 Fahrenheit, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like before it goes into the oven. So I'll be back in 30 minutes when the oven is preheated. Okay, so this is our loaf now. It's risen to the top of the tin almost after 30 minutes of resting. So I'm going to put it into the oven and bake it for 35 minutes. Then I'll take it out and test it. I'll tap the bottom of the loaf, and if it's hollow it means it's done. And then I'll come back and show you the results. Okay, so I'm back with you, and I've baked our loaf. Now I actually baked it for 35 minutes and then I tested it, and I tested it with my thermometer, and the internal temperature should reach about 190 Fahrenheit, 92 Celsius. And although mine did in certain places, in other places it wasn't quite that hot. So I left it in for a further 10 minutes, so it's 45 minutes the total bake. Then I've taken it out and I've allowed it to cool down just a little bit, but it's still warm because I think that's going to be how it's best served. So this is what it looks like, and I've actually just started to tear one piece away. So I'm just going to tear that off like that and have a taste. It's nice and herby and garlicky, and I can taste some of the cheese as well. That is very good indeed. It'd be ideal with soup, or maybe with if you have pasta with a lot of sauce, it'd be ideal for mopping up the sauce and such like as well. So it takes a bit of time to make this recipe, and rolling out the dough is a bit of a task because it likes to shrink back all the time. But it's well worth doing, so I hope you've enjoyed the recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and it will take you to a link to the recipe. And I'll put a link to that below the video as well, and I'll be back with you with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.